The hospital corridor was too bright. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I sat in that sterile waiting room, my hands trembling despite years of naval training that taught me to stay calm under enemy fire. The envelope in my pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Inside were test results that would either give me decades more or just months. But that wasn't what made my heart race. It was the second envelope. The one containing a plan so calculated, so ruthless, that even my commanding officers would have called it tactical genius. I was about to launch the most important operation of my life, and the target wasn't an enemy combatant. It was my own family. Hello, everyone. My name is Emma Cole. Today, I'm sharing my own story, not as a tale of distant heroes, but as a raw, personal account from my life in the Navy and beyond. Imagine this, you're staring down the barrel of what could be your final days, and you decide to pull the trigger on a test that exposes the true colors of those closest to you. You ask for help, not a fortune, just enough to show they care, and the silence that follows is deafening. Except for one voice. The one from the person who has the least to give. That's where my story begins. Stick with me, because what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and the quiet strength that wins wars no one sees coming. Let me take you back to where it all started for me. I was born in a small coastal town in Virginia, the kind of place where the ocean's roar drowns out the everyday noise, and the Navy base looms like a constant reminder of duty and discipline. My parents, James and Linda Cole, were hardworking folks, Dad a mechanic who fixed everything from cars to broken dreams, and Mom a schoolteacher who believed in tough love and straight A's. We weren't rich, but we had enough. I was the middle child, sandwiched between my older brother, Ethan, who always had that golden boy charm, and my younger sister, Grace, who seemed to dance through life with a spirit that no hardship could dim. Even as a child, I was different. While Ethan was winning debate tournaments and Grace was painting murals on her bedroom walls, I was down at the docks, watching destroyers cut through the waves. The salty air, the precision of naval operations, the sense of purpose, it called to something deep within me. Something that whispered, "This is where you belong." From a young age, I felt the pull of something bigger than our little family unit. The sea called to me, whispering promises of adventure and purpose. At 18, right after high school graduation, I enlisted in the United States Navy. It wasn't an easy decision. Mom cried for days, Dad patted me on the back with a gruff "make us proud," and Ethan joked that I'd come back with tattoos and tall tales. Grace, just 14 at the time, hugged me tight and said, "Bring me back a seashell from every port." That was her, always finding the magic in the mundane. I still have that collection. Shells from 23 different ports, each one carefully labeled and stored in a wooden box Grace made me during her high school woodshop class. I never forgot that promise. Boot camp was my first real test. Those early mornings, the endless drills, the shouts of drill instructors echoing in my ears, they forged me into someone unbreakable. I learned that valor isn't about grand gestures, it's about showing up, day after day, even when your body screams to quit. I rose through the ranks, from seaman to petty officer, and eventually earned my commission as an officer after putting myself through night classes and deployments that took me halfway around the world. I've served on destroyers slicing through the Pacific, coordinated logistics in the heat of the Middle East, and even led teams in humanitarian missions after natural disasters. The Navy taught me that true bonds are built in the trenches, where actions speak louder than any oath. But life at sea isn't all glory. It's lonely nights staring at the stars, wondering if the people back home still remember you. It's missing birthdays, holidays, weddings. It's coming back after 9 months at sea and feeling like a stranger in your own family. Over the years, my family drifted in different directions. Ethan built a successful career in real estate, married his college sweetheart, and had 2 kids. He lived in a big house in the suburbs, drove a fancy SUV, and always seemed to have it all together. Every Christmas card showed the perfect family, matching sweaters, professional photography, captions about #blessedlife. Mom and Dad retired comfortably, splitting their time between golf outings and community events. They'd become social butterflies, always posting photos of fundraiser dinners and country club gatherings. And Grace? She pursued her passion for art, but life threw curveballs her way: a bad marriage that ended in divorce, a couple of kids to raise on her own, and a string of freelance gigs that barely paid the bills. She was the broke one in the family, as Ethan sometimes teased, but she had a heart of gold. She'd send me handmade cards from her tiny apartment, filled with doodles and encouragement, even when she was scraping by. I remember one card in particular. I'd just returned from a deployment where we'd lost 2 sailors in an accident. I was wrecked, questioning everything. Grace's card arrived with a watercolor painting of a lighthouse in a storm. The caption read, "The strongest lights shine when darkness is deepest. You're my lighthouse, Em." She had no idea what I'd been through. I never talked about the hard stuff, but somehow, she knew I needed that. By the time I hit my early 40s, I'd achieved what many dream of: a stable career, a modest home I bought near the base in San Diego, and a sense of independence that came from years of self-reliance. I wasn't married, no kids. The Navy had been my family in many ways. But then, everything changed with a single doctor's visit. It started innocently enough, a routine physical during my last shore rotation. I'd been feeling off: persistent fatigue, unexplained pains in my chest, shortness of breath during runs that used to be effortless. I chalked it up to age and the toll of deployments, but the tests revealed something far worse. The doctor, a no-nonsense captain with a clipboard and a sympathetic frown, sat me down and delivered the news. The appointment was at 1,400 hours, I remember, because I kept checking my watch, thinking I had a briefing at 1500 that suddenly seemed laughably unimportant. "Emma," he said, sliding an X-ray onto the light board. My heart looked wrong even to my untrained eye. "We've found irregularities in your heart. It's a rare condition, congenital, but aggravated by stress and years of high-pressure environments. Without aggressive treatment, your time could be limited. Months, maybe a year or 2 at best." The room tilted. I'd faced down hostile situations, navigated ships through typhoons, made split-second decisions that affected hundreds of lives. But sitting in that office, in my crisp white uniform, I felt utterly powerless. "How limited?" I asked, my voice steady despite the chaos in my chest. 6 months to 2 years, depending on how aggressively we treat it and how your body responds. Limited time. Those words hit like a torpedo. I was 42, in the prime of my career, and suddenly, the future I'd mapped out vanished. The Navy provided excellent medical coverage, TRICARE took care of the basics, but the experimental treatments they recommended came with out-of-pocket costs that could add up fast. More than that, it was the emotional blow. Who would I lean on? In the Navy, we have battle buddies, chains of command, but family? That's supposed to be the unbreakable anchor. As I drove home that day, the California sun setting over the ocean, my mind raced. The drive was automatic, I'd made it 1,000 times, but everything looked different now. The surfers catching evening waves. The families walking their dogs on the beach. The runners on the boardwalk. They all had time. Time I might not have. I thought about my assets: the house, fully paid off after years of careful saving, a decent retirement fund, some investments. No debts, no loose ends. But who would inherit it all? The question gnawed at me. In the military, we plan for every contingency: wills, powers of attorney, all updated regularly. But this felt different. It wasn't just about distributing stuff, it was about rewarding loyalty, the kind I'd seen in my shipmates who risked everything for each other. That night, I sat on my deck overlooking the ocean, a glass of bourbon in hand, the good stuff I saved for special occasions, though nothing about this felt special. And that's when the idea crystallized. A test. A simple, unassuming test to see who in my family would show up when it mattered. In warfare, you probe enemy defenses before a major offensive. You send out small units to test their response time, their commitment, their true strength. What if I did the same with my family? That's when the idea struck me. A test. A simple, unassuming test to see who in my family would show up when it mattered. Not for glory or gain, but for me. I'd ask each of them for $5,000, not as a loan, not with promises of repayment, just help. I'd frame it as unexpected medical expenses, something the insurance didn't fully cover. It wasn't a lie, the copays and travel for specialists could eat into savings. But more importantly, it was a gauge of their hearts. In the Navy, we test equipment under stress to see if it holds. Why not family? The amount was deliberate. $5,000. Enough to be significant but not catastrophic. Enough to require thought but not to bankrupt anyone. For Ethan, with his real estate empire, it was pocket change. For my retired parents with their comfortable nest egg, it was manageable. For Grace, scraping by month to month, it would be a sacrifice. I didn't want their money. I wanted to know who they were when I needed them most. I gave myself a week to plan. I rehearsed the conversation, kept it simple and direct. No melodrama, no guilt trips. Just the facts and a request. The first call would be the hardest. I started with my parents. I called them that evening, putting on my best composed voice. My hand shook as I dialed. Ridiculous, I'd called in airstrikes with steadier hands. Mom answered, her tone warm but distracted, like she was midway through a crossword puzzle. Emma, honey. How's life on the base? Any exciting news? I took a deep breath. Actually, Mom, not exciting, more serious. I've had some health issues come up. The doctors found something with my heart. It's treatable, but there are costs involved that aren't fully covered. I hate to ask, but I need about $5,000 to get things started. It's not a loan, I just need help right now. There was a pause, the kind that stretches like a taut line ready to snap. I could hear the TV in the background, some game show with canned laughter. The contrast was surreal. Then Dad chimed in from the extension, he always listened in on family calls. Emma, what's this about? Heart issues? You should have told us sooner. But $5,000? That's a chunk of change. We're on a fixed income now, you know. Have you looked into better insurance options? Or maybe cut back on some expenses? Cut back on expenses. I lived in a modest two-bedroom house, drove a 10-year-old sedan, and my biggest splurge was the bourbon I was currently drinking to steady my nerves. But I said nothing. Mom jumped in. Yes, dear, we're worried about you, of course. But maybe you can budget it out? We've always taught you to be independent. Let us think on it and call you back. They didn't ask for details about the diagnosis. No offers to visit, no immediate "we'll wire it tomorrow." Just practical advice, as if I were a student overspending on textbooks. I hung up feeling a hollow ache. These were the people who'd raised me, cheered at my commissioning ceremony. But when push came to shove, their response was hesitation wrapped in concern. I marked them down in my notebook, parents, let us think on it. No commitment. No immediate action. I waited 2 days. No callback came. Next, I called Ethan. He picked up on the second ring, his voice booming with that salesman energy. Sis. Long time no talk. How's the high seas treating you? Still bossing sailors around? I laughed weakly, then dove in. Ethan, I need to talk about something important. Health stuff, my heart's acting up, and treatments are pricey. I need $5,000 to cover some gaps. Can you help? He chuckled, actually chuckled. Whoa, Emma, straight to the point. You Navy types don't beat around the bush. $5,000? Come on, you're the tough one in the family. You've got that officer salary, right? Tell you what, if it's a loan, we can work something out with interest, kidding. But seriously, let me check with the wife. Kids' college funds are tight this year. You sure it's that bad? Again, no probing questions about my well-being. No, I'm on the next flight. Just laughter and deflection. I could hear his kids screaming in the background, and I wondered if he even registered what I'd said. My heart condition. Potentially life-threatening. Did he hear that part? It's bad, Ethan, I said, my voice harder than I intended. Right. Look, I'll talk to Jennifer and get back to you. Gotta run, Tyler's got soccer in 20. I ended the call with a polite thanks, but inside, a storm brewed. Ethan, the brother who'd borrowed money from me in college without a second thought, now saw my plea as a joke. I'd loaned him $3,000 when he was starting his business, never asked for it back, never even brought it up. But now, when I needed him, it was about checking with his wife and college funds. Ethan, let me check with the wife. Another evasion. 3 days passed. No call from Ethan either. Finally, Grace. I saved her for last because part of me was terrified. Terrified she'd fail the test too, and I'd have to face the reality that I was completely alone. She lived 4 hours away in a rundown apartment in the inland valleys, juggling waitressing shifts and painting commissions. When she answered, her voice was tired but bright. Emma. My favorite sailor. What's up? You sound off. I repeated the script, bracing for another letdown. Grace, I've got bad news. Heart condition, doctors say time's limited without treatment. Need $5,000 for costs. No strings, just help. Silence, but not the awkward kind. Not the let me think kind. It was the silence of someone actually processing, actually feeling. Then, oh, Emma. I'm so sorry. Limited time? That's terrifying. Her voice cracked. She was crying. For me. I don't have much, heck, I'm behind on rent this month, but I can scrape together $1,500 from savings and tips. It's yours. And I'm coming down. I'll drive tonight if you need me. Just say the word. Tears welled up in my eyes, the first I'd allowed myself since the diagnosis. $1,500 was probably her entire safety net, yet she offered it without hesitation. No questions about repayment, no lectures on budgeting. Just action. You don't have to drive, I said, but she insisted. Nonsense. Family shows up. I'll be there by morning. And she was. Grace arrived at dawn, her old sedan packed with groceries, blankets, and her kids' drawings for me. The car looked like it might not make another trip. One taillight was held on with duct tape, the bumper was dented, and it made a concerning rattling sound. But she'd driven through the night to get to me. She didn't just drop off money, she stayed. For days, she cooked simple meals, chicken soup from scratch, my favorite, cleaned the house I hadn't had energy for, and sat with me through the quiet hours. We'd talk about everything, our childhood escapades, her dreams of opening an art studio, my Navy stories of storms at sea and camaraderie in port. She held my hand during a particularly rough night when chest pains flared, whispering, "You're the strongest person I know, Emma. You've got this." One afternoon, as she was folding laundry on my couch, I asked her, "Grace, why did you come? You have your kids, your job, your own problems." She looked at me like I'd asked why water was wet. "You're my sister, Em. You'd do the same for me." And she was right. I would have. But the thing was, I had. When she'd gotten divorced and needed a place to stay, I'd wired her money for first and last month's rent. When her ex stopped paying child support, I'd sent grocery gift cards. When her car broke down, I'd covered the repairs. Not because I expected anything back, but because that's what family does. Or at least, what family is supposed to do. Watching her, I saw the valor I'd chased in uniform embodied in my little sister. She had nothing, no fancy job, no savings buffer, but she gave everything: time, presence, love in action. Meanwhile, Calls from Mom, Dad, and Ethan trickled in with excuses. We're still thinking, or things are tight. No visits, no real concern beyond words. Mom called once, asking, "How are you feeling, dear?" But when I said, scared, honestly, she quickly changed the subject to their golf tournament. Ethan texted, "Hang in there, sis. You're tough." Followed by an emoji. An emoji. As if my mortality was a social media post to react to. Grace, meanwhile, was researching holistic approaches to heart health, printing out articles, and cooking meals rich in omega-3s. She wasn't wealthy enough to solve my medical crisis, but she was present enough to walk through it with me. It was then I made my decision. I contacted a JAG officer on base, a sharp lawyer named Captain Thompson. We'd worked together before. He handled wills for service members efficiently. In his office, overlooking the harbor, I laid it out. Everything to Grace, the house, the funds, all of it. She's the one who showed up. He nodded, no judgment. Understood, Lieutenant Cole. We'll make it ironclad. We drafted the will that afternoon, including a small trust for her kids' education. Grace had no idea. She thought I was just tying up loose ends. I didn't tell her because I didn't want her actions to change. This wasn't about rewarding her for a performance. It was about recognizing the truth of who she was. Weeks passed. My treatment began: medication, therapy, an experimental procedure that the Navy partially funded. Miraculously, it stabilized me. The prognosis shifted from limited to manageable. I wasn't dying tomorrow, I had time. But the test's results lingered like smoke after a fire. Somehow, word of the will leaked, maybe through a family lawyer or a slip during a call. Mom called first, her voice laced with hurt. "Emma, we heard about the house going to Grace. Is that true? We're your parents, we raised all of you equally. It's not fair." Fair. The word hung in the air like an accusation. Dad added, "We couldn't help with the money then, but we were worried. Why punish us?" Then Ethan, "Sis, I messed up," laughing it off. I should have taken it seriously. But cutting me out? Come on, we're blood. Blood. Everyone kept talking about blood like it was a magic shield against accountability. Their reaction stung, but confirmed everything. They hadn't checked in during my darkest days, not a single visit from them. Grace had been there, day in, day out, without knowing about any inheritance. It wasn't about the money for her, it was about me. I called a family meeting at my house. They all came, Mom and Dad flying in, Ethan driving with his family. Grace was there too, confused but supportive. She'd asked me if I wanted her to leave, to let me handle family business, but I'd insisted she stay. She was family. More than anyone else in that room. We sat in the living room, the ocean breeze filtering through the windows. I laid it all out, the diagnosis, the test, their responses. "Mom, Dad, you suggested budgeting but didn't ask how I was feeling. Ethan, you laughed and moved on. Grace offered everything she had and showed up. In the Navy, we learn that loyalty isn't words, it's deeds. That's why the will stands." Tears flowed. Mom admitted they'd taken my independence for granted. "We thought you were unbreakable, Emma. We should have been there." Her hands trembled as she spoke, and for the first time, I saw my mother as fallible, human, flawed. Dad nodded, regret in his eyes. "We failed you. We got comfortable in our retirement, and we forgot that you might need us. We're sorry." Ethan apologized sincerely. I was self-absorbed. "I'm sorry. I let success make me callous. You've always been there for me, and I dropped the ball when it mattered most." Grace was stunned. "Emma, the house? I don't deserve." "You do," I interrupted. "Because you acted with valor when no one else did. You prove that family isn't about what you have, it's about what you're willing to give. The meeting ended with hugs, promises to do better. Real promises, not just words. In the months since, things have improved. Family dinners happen more often, calls aren't just surface level. Ethan's helping Grace with her art business, connecting her with clients and helping her set up an online shop. Mom and Dad visit regularly, not out of guilt, but genuine care. They've started a tradition of Sunday video calls where we actually talk about our lives, our fears, our hopes. My health is stable, regular checkups, an adjusted lifestyle. I'm back to light duty, mentoring young sailors on what true strength looks like. But the lesson sticks with me. Family isn't defined by blood alone, it's by who stands beside you in the storm. In the Navy, we call it having someone's six, watching their back no matter what. Grace had mine when I needed it most. The test I conducted was harsh. Some might call it manipulative. But it revealed a truth I needed to see, that loyalty is proven in action, not intention. That valor isn't always on the battlefield, sometimes it's in a 4-hour drive in a broken-down car, in $1,500 given from an empty bank account, in homemade soup and held hands in the dark. If this story resonates, think about your own circles. Who would show up for you? And more importantly, who are you showing up for? On Valor Voice, we celebrate those unsung acts of courage. If you've got a story of loyalty tested and true, share it in the comments. Like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more tales that inspire. This is Emma Cole, signing off. Stay valorous.